Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Pull Up Tray podcast. I'm your host Samson Folk, and I'm joined, of course, by the namesake, Trevon Heath, who is the tray that pulls up. Trevon, how you doing? How you feeling? There's been some insane basketball going on from the Raptors lately. In like watching, it's like one of those. It's like the in arena entertainment where you see
Yeah,
like the cars and you know which one finishes there, but it's just like a whole bunch of mishmashery going on. Or it's like the 3 card Monty. It's you know what the
yeah.
outcome is supposed to be, but there's just a whole bunch of hooliganism going on in between.
Right. I've found like this entire situation just like a representation of how old I've gotten. Because there was like 2021 where I was cheering for them to lose every single game, and it felt ethical. And now I was watching yesterday with a scowl on my face, like I was 55 years old. I
You know,
I
I
Go ahead.
think it's that you do this podcast now.
Yeah.
You are beholden to talk about this team, and you can't just tune out. You can't
Yeah.
just turn it off and be like, "I'll tune in when they have an awesome draft pick." I have foisted upon you this viewership.
Yeah, I watch every game this season. So you watch the game, and I think there's a difference between like not playing certain guys. I think that's fine. That's just like name of the game. But when you're actively trying to lose the game, and it's very clear, like they benching Jakob is okay. You benching one starter is fine. Then they bench Scotty because Orlando can't come back into the game. You're up one. You then bench the guy. I know Paulo had 41, but RJ was the best player on the court yesterday. And they bench him up one, hoping to lose the game. And I don't know if I could like feel the energy of the time or just feel the Raptors. Like when Jacoby hit that shot, you just feel like ugh. As he hit the biggest shot of his life thus far. He was acting like it was game 7, which was awesome to see. I know like you want to get like game reps for some of these guys and like a deeper look at some of these, like particularly like the Sheds, the Jacoby Walters, the Jonathan Mogbos. You want to see if they're going to be like rotational players for you next year because you're trying to win.
Mhm.
But running your 905 lineup against against the current 8 seed is so unethical. It's so disgusting. And honestly, if you're going to approach that, just don't play the guys. I think it's much worse to bench them halfway through.
Well, so Lewis wrote this big piece afterwards where he was like, the Raptors organization has embarrassed itself. Not the players, but the
Yeah.
organization. And this is one of the most interesting things because, with the internet and with like the game theory of the NBA, there is this understanding between organization and fandom now about
Mhm.
what tanking is, about the necessity for a high pick that just didn't exist in like the early 2000s, even like 2012, right? You look at that, and if a team was intentionally taking guys out like Scotty, RJ, Jakob, Emmanuel quickly, everybody basically, people would turn their nose up and be like, this is an entertainment product.
Yeah.
Competition undergirds everything that makes this league work. And that, like, by osmosis of organizations messaging about it and enough fans being interested in it, in the
Yeah.
Sam Hinkeification of the NBA, now it's like an understanding.
Mhm.
And I have to ask, what do you think is better? The Raptors going into this game saying, we're going to get 28 minutes or so out of Scotty Barnes. We're going to get 23 out of Jakob Poeltl. They're still getting reps. Players or fans still get to see these players. We're just going to pull them out with 8 minutes left in the fourth, which is, like it's that one
Yeah.
quick trick to lose a game. And except that the Magic can't seem to to get back, apparently losing 2 in a row. However, or is that the other side of it, which is like what
Mhm.
happened in Philadelphia and what's clearly happening in Utah now, where you look at everybody, they're like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
9 of our guys are injured." And you're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
9?" And they're like, "Yeah, all these guys are dealing with some nebulous ankle thing. It's just
In
tough right now."
injury
Like
management.
they have what Brandon Ingram has,
Yes,
except it's down
100%.
the full roster. What do you find better, the Raptors process or the Jazz process?
I think personally you can't signal to players that you're trying to lose games. I I think it's
Dog, they must know. They
well,
like,
I
how do
know
you
they know,
Scotty Barnes,
but
he's like, "Scotty, you gotta hit the bench for the rest of the game." You gotta be
yeah,
like, "What the hell are
what
you
the
talking
it's
about,
just
man?"
it's just like such a like oxymoron. You've been preaching all these things the entire
Yeah.
year, trying to be competitive. The Raptors have been very competitive for a tanking team, and then you decide to actively do things that go against the culture you're trying to build, go against the momentum you've built to some degree. Because one thing I will credit Darko for, they compete very hard.
Yep.
I think they play to their talent level more often than not, aside from like one stretch of the season, more or less. And the fact that you're signaling to these, especially younger players, that it's okay to lose, just like it's hard for me to wrap my mind around. And a pro athlete's probably more competitive than I am, so I think they're probably feeling the same way.
Well, so that's because you get really great insights from guys like Jeff Teague, for example,
Mhm.
post career, being like, competition is one thing, but my career is the other thing, right?
Yeah.
So for the guys on the Raptors who, let's say, don't want to get injured, know that their paycheck is secured, and that's an interesting
Mhm.
aspect of this whole tanking thing from the Raptors is like Scotty is paid, max extension, Jakob is paid, RJ is paid, Quickly is paid. Everybody got paid. Nobody
Yeah.
is trying to get that. It's not their contract year. And
Yeah.
so from that point of view, they're all quite secure. They obviously want to play. They're competitive. They want to win these
Mhm.
games. However, they're secure there. And for guys like Jacoby Walter, 28 minutes, how many shot attempts? 10 shot attempts. He went to the line 4 times for 8 free throws.
Yeah.
AJ Lawson gets to have 13 points on 5 of 6 shooting. Like Orlando Robinson is like, how the hell am I playing 20 minutes a game every game? And now going
Yeah.
north of that, Jamal Shed gets 21. Jared Roden gets 20. Like Jonathan Mobo, the Magic were just bashing.
Oh,
That was the ladder match,
so
dude.
the
Was
uter
Raptors Magic? They were beating the hell out of them. So
it
anyway, that's
yeah,
what's happening. It's a bunch of craziness, and it is unethical. It's all
yeah,
unethical.
yeah.
However, that social contract, fans and organization have shaken hands on it years ago.
Mm,
You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, if you ask me on its merits, it's shameful. Of course it is.
yeah.
What are we watching for? We're trying to see these guys compete. We're trying to see the best of the best. Like, think about the Raptors of 1996 and how when the Raptors were like a bad franchise, all we heard about was like
Yeah.
they beat the Bulls. They weren't supposed
What
to be
supposed
there and they were. It's like those stories that
yeah.
fueled 16 years of coverage, right? And now but there's that handshake. It's like, yes,
I
it's unethical. Yes, it undercuts all of the competition, but everybody knows.
it's tough. Like I feel like Professor Crocker and like Fairly Odd Parents. When I look at the draft odds and see that it like tangibly the difference between moving one or two spots like isn't significant. And it looks like even based on the Raptors like current schedule, they have the easiest schedule rest of the way. It's going to be incredibly hard, even with their team, to maintain a top five spot. It looks more likely they're headed to seventh, maybe eighth. And to do all of that and then get the seventh overall selection just would burn my soul to a degree. Like if if you told me that they played quick RJ and Scotty and they reeled off another 6-7 game winning streak and that's why they have the seventh pick, I'd be okay with that. You're getting really good momentum. The Raptors have been one of the most injured teams this season. So you're trying to get back those minutes that you lost in the beginning of the season and also have that like turn into winning. They haven't had this nucleus win a lot. And I think if you're heading into a season next year where I think a lot of these guys like place on the team will be decided on how that season goes. Darko probably will be decided on how that season goes, and maybe even the
Yep.
front office will be decided on how that team goes. They should get in the habit of winning games and playing in competitive situations. So I think it's a tough way to end the season, a season that's just been maligned with shitty luck the entire way.
The interesting thing, right, is that is how the season is going for the Portland Trailblazers. Are
Yeah.
like the opposite intention of the Raptors.
Mm,
Portland has their guys who can fuel them to winning games. They've been a decent team over the past like month and a half,
yeah,
and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna play the guys. We're gonna
yeah.
see what happens." And lottery luck, whatever the hell it is, let it be damned. And I definitely have seen some Trailblazers fans who are like shaking their fist at the sky, like, "Damn it, this is not smart at all."
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's like when I did the podcast with Joe Casharo and we were talking about how teams that didn't tank necessarily ended up making the leap in the lottery, and teams that like the lottery, you never know how it's going to shake out, especially with flattened odds. Like either Kobe White will be lifted. Well, actually, you could have it both ways. Kobe White is lifted through the streets of Toronto like Spider-Man, like carefully, carefully, he's a hero,
Yeah.
and because he hit that shot and quickly fouled him, which was absolutely
Jeez.
inexplicable. Or Jacoby Walter at the same time could be lifted like carefully, carefully, he's a hero because if his shot, like say the Raptors make the jump from the 6th seed or something, then it's like
Mhm.
instead of the 5th seed and the 5th seed got like the 4th pick or the 5th pick, that's like, oh, Jacoby's three-pointer was everything. It not only gave them a win, but it launched them into, or it could be the other way, right? It's
Yeah.
just, it's, I would never ever begrudge somebody for saying like, I hate this shit, this shit sucks,
Yeah.
this absolutely undermines what makes the league great, which is competition between the
Yeah.
best players in the world, and it does. However, I can't begrudge somebody for saying like, this is better for team building either, because
Mhm.
objectively, if you get that difference maker, like we have a friend of us as friends and friend of the show, Goose, you have people, and also there's just people saying that like Cooper Flag is that level of prospect,
Yeah.
right? And so if he's that level of prospect to you, why wouldn't you just say, hey, it's tank season? You know what I mean?
But then 2 years ago, you said screw Victor Wembanyama and you went for it. So what's changed now?
that that will come up next year
Yeah.
if things go poorly. They're gonna be like, all right, man, we're seeing some mixed messages here. And truly you would be. I mean, it's just tough. It's just tough
Yeah.
because you can see it from both angles.
Yeah.
And again, I could never argue against someone being like, I thought the coach is supposed to try to win. I thought the organization is supposed to try to win. I thought the players are supposed to try to win. Because we've had conversations where we say, like, the coach doesn't really tank. Nope, that's not true. The message has come down from on high. There's a directive very clearly saying that
Yeah.
Darko, you are meant to tank. There's no other way to slice it.
Yeah.
Darko is part and parcel of the front office's vision. Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett may want to win, but they don't decide if they're on the floor or not. So players don't tank. Maybe Quickly with the stealth tank fouling Kobe White, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's just, it is so ubiquitous with NBA culture now. Like it used to be edgy. There used to be like Kevin O'Connor was the guy who said like
Mhm.
blow it up and it was a meme. But
Yeah.
now it's just like 35% of every fan base and 60% of that fan base online at all times is saying blow it up. Like if that contingent got their way, 26 teams in the NBA would constantly be trying to barrel towards the bottom consistently.
Yeah.
It's just like it's so ubiquitous, man. It's not good for the league, I don't think. But I don't know how you put the genie back in the bottle there.
Yeah, it's hard. And it's unique to basketball too, because like
Yeah.
hockey, football, there are obviously like transient players and like people that transcend. But on the head, like that's one or two players in like a generation. Like basketball, you can change the outlook of your franchise on just hitting on one draft, which is why like the lotto is so important. Plus, those other sports are violent too. It's
Yeah.
it's hard to tank and sit out guys in those sports because those guys get injured.
It's also it's harder because NBA players, as far as their effort level, waxes and wanes. I think
Yes.
a decent amount because of and they should have guaranteed contracts, pro labor over here, because of extremely lucrative guaranteed contracts and the lack of physicality in the game.
Mhm.
If you're in the football field and you're like across from a guy who just absolutely rolls you over, how do you not bring your best the next possession? You know what I mean? How do you
Yeah,
be like, "Ah, it's chill, man. It's fine." I don't know. Like, I couldn't do that. And I'm
yeah,
not even a professional athlete, but if someone, like, rolls me over, I'm like, "Alright, you have to get my best." There's just something
100%.
about that level of and in hockey as well too, like,
Yeah.
there's always that, we'll use the term toxic masculinity underpinning everything, like, you have to be the strongest dude, and if someone, like, punks you, you gotta make it happen, and in the NBA, punking looks a lot different. It's very rare that we get to see LeBron James catch a lob and put Jason Terry in a grave. It doesn't usually manifest like that. A crossover is not a very violent thing. A
Yeah.
shot in the face is not a very violent thing. That's maybe why we get like the gun and like we get all the big type of I guess emoji emoting over top of guys to make up for it. But
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
And I felt like temporarily at one point the plan was kind of hoarded off some sort of tanking, just like teams from like 10 to 12 are still vying to get that last spot. But I think collectively as a league, like I hear from every fan base, like especially a team like in the Raptors spot, their fans saying like if they make the play in, this would be the end of my end of my days. So like it hasn't necessarily worked out in the same way, even though I am a fan of the plan. It's just in a draft year like this where there's a guy where that could be considered like a generational player, even if that's not necessarily how me or you think. Every team is going to, if they don't have a chance to win a title, is going to be gutting to make sure that they have at least a non-zero chance of getting him. So I don't think it's going to happen every year. Next year's draft is really good, no matter. That might change according to what people say next February, March. But next
People
draft
have
is
already softened on this draft because, of
yeah.
course, they always soften on a draft because kids can't do everything well, as it turns out, or
Yeah.
young men, I should say. But yeah, the Raptors are only 4 games out of the play-in.
Yeah.
They're 4 games, and it's partially because they're on a 2-game winning streak, thanks to the Orlando Magic, who the Magic are 29-34. I can't imagine any Magic fan was expecting that this year. They probably thought they were going to punch up at 50 games or something. But
100%.
yeah, 4 games back of a play-in spot for the Raptors is an absurdity. Like that,
Yeah.
trying to imagine, like simply trying to imagine, however many years ago before the play-in, just like at all, that a team that had like a 15-game losing streak, 12-game losing streak would have a shot at the playoffs is unconscionable, dude. You know what I mean? A team that has actively tried to lose at least a handful of games, a team that has had these massive losing streaks, a team that has had no health, has been bereft of everything, is like, oh yeah, if we stack a couple together, we're right back in it. You know what I mean? It's just
it's
nuts.
it's crazy. Like based on their schedule, like they could by the end of next week, they could be a game back. Like their next 5 games is they have they have 2 games against the Wizards on Saturday and Monday. They actually play the Jazz on Friday. Then they play Philly, and you don't know how they're going to approach the rest of the season. If Beat's not there, then they play the Jazz again, and then they play Portland, and that takes you to the 16th. They don't they don't play a good team in March aside of the Warriors.
They are sandwiched between 2 teams in Philly, which they're 1.5 games back of. Philly is 1-9 in their last 10, and below them, they have 6 more wins than the Hornets, and the Hornets are 1-9 in their last 10. It's just like the Nets have lost 5 in a row as well too, and they're a game and a half up on the Raptors. It's just like everybody's falling, and the Raptors aren't even good. They're simply just mediocre, and they're
Yeah.
rising in the standings. Like, the end of the NBA season is something to behold, man.
Yeah.
Like, it so truly is. Oh, Lord in heaven.
I don't know how they're gonna approach the next 2 weeks. I think they have to sit out guys. Like, even if you play Scotty 25 minutes against the Jazz, they're gonna probably win the game. If you play this like they're and against Washington too. Washington, they play hard, they're just not very good. So maybe you lose those games, but
Yeah,
it's gonna
that's the
be
thing too.
extremely tough.
Like, you look at the successful tankers, the
Yeah.
Hornets, the
Mhm.
Wizards, the Jazz, the Pelicans are also included in there. none of these guys, the Pelicans were certainly close to it, but nobody actually like turned the corner. And many
Yeah.
of these teams have been tanking for years. It's
Yep.
just this is where it's the one of the most interesting conversations in sports and especially in the NBA is like where does culture impact and like development meet with tanking, you know? And the Thunder are the best motion against that, like, hey, just go get talent. But the Thunder, everyone would be like, this team is boring and sucks if they didn't have Shea, and Shea
Yeah.
got drafted 11th and they just traded for him. Like that was
Yeah.
just and I say again, if there's a Shea available now, don't worry about your draft position. Just trade that draft pick for whoever the next Shea is if you could find him. If there's an MVP available for trade, just launch that. Oh man.
I think Houston is a really good example of like how you can maintain being young while also like create an environment of winning where they've drafted within the top 5 multiple times, but instead of letting those guys drive winning and see how that works out, that sometimes takes young players 3, 4, 5 years, which is could be miserable to go through. And usually a front office and a head coach usually washes out while they're trying to figure out that as well. They they made bold signings like giving Fred all of that money. They paid Dylan at a time where no one wanted to touch Dylan Brooks for the dumbest reasons, but they
they're
grew
like
him.
they're like Jaw keeps bringing guns everywhere. What the hell is wrong with Dylan Brooks? Which is awesome, dude. Like that's such a great place to
Just
end up.
insane. I don't think we've ever seen it something like that again. Like Shams reporting this
People
player
said
is
he
not
was
getting
gonna
signed.
play in China, dude. Like the
Oh
perception of Dylan Brooks, the player, was
yeah,
so far away from who he is just because he talked trash to LeBron and lost, as if that's a unique
yeah,
thing that happens to everybody. It's just like, yeah, Dylan Brooks is an exceptionally annoying player if you're a fan against him or a player against him, but he's good. And the Rockets were like, he's good. He really gives a shit. Let's pay him. And that's the same thing with Fred VanVleet. The Rockets have been cooking a couple
yeah.
times in the draft. Like Amen Thompson, that's a big
That's a
selection,
big
and he wasn't guaranteed at that spot. Of course, people considered him quite high, but it's not a guarantee. And Şengün, much to my chagrin, I still have my qualms about like how it looks in the playoffs. He is objectively, for what he got drafted 15th, 16th.
Yeah,
He's
something around
he's
there.
he's objectively given them a lot of juice, and on a team that offensively is looking for it in a lot of places. That's why they miss Fred so much when he's not there. They just they're towing the line quite nice, and it'll
Yeah.
be very interesting to see how the team building goes forward to be like, okay, now we're trying to take it up to the next level. Because I think the Rockets never haven't made the jump to great. They're
Mhm.
good, and they paid for that good, and they hit on a couple draft picks. The next step, whether it's via trade or development or some other thing, that will be very interesting to see where they take it because they're at the very difficult spot right now. And the Raptors, hopefully, will be in a similar position to the Rockets with, guys like hopefully Grady, Jacoby have this, potential you expect to come out of them. Their draft pick this
Mhm.
year, and they will have paid RJ.
Yeah.
And that's what we can talk about. RJ trade rumors, right?
Oh, yeah,
It
that did happen.
actually it actually landed. Oh yeah, by the way, like the podcast, please, and thank you.
25 25
Like,
minutes in.
it's not our best. Like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, Trey. RJ Barrett it's being reported that the Raptors offered him up to the Pelicans as a cannon fodder for the Brandon Ingram trade, and that the Pelicans, looking at their roster, said he doesn't really fit what we're doing. The expiring of Bruce Brown is more important for what we plan to do going forward. RJ Barrett as a trade piece. We talked about it a little bit on Mac's podcast, but where do you sit with the Raptors apparently openly accepting this as like, hey, this is something, well, not openly, it being communicated in the back channels that this is something they'd be okay with?
I think like logically looking at it, it makes sense. Like this team hasn't proven to be good enough to toe the line of being like a near tax team and having to maneuver to avoid this. They've won 20 games, but it's tough because RJ's probably been the most consistent. He's probably had the most success compared to the expectations probably given onto him on the team. But I think as you're building long term, you probably need a stronger defensive anchor somewhere on the perimeter to pair with Scotty to get really serious. Although the Raptors defense has been good with him on the floor, as you're playing better teams, you want another guy that can be sticky on the perimeter. It's going to be really tough to win a playoff series with Grady, Jacoby, and RJ as your perimeter backline. And RJ has to get paid in a year plus. So, and it would be very tough for the Raptors. So I think for me, it's logical. And for fit reasons, Brandon Ingram should be able to, in terms of like offensive punch, be able to, if not replicate what he's done, if exceed that. And you probably find a better fit around the team in some of the archetypes or stretch out his contract to add more depth to the team.
I think it is a little bit depressing to me.
Yeah.
And because there are some archetypes in the NBA that teams just get really tired of really quick. And this, the NBA is obviously moving towards like hyper efficiency. Derek White is like we talked about on the podcast with Mac, is like that hyper efficient shooting guard who plays a high level of defense and doesn't necessarily take that many possessions, is a really vaunted archetype right now. And that is not RJ. RJ
Yeah.
is neither the big star that moves the team forward. At least it doesn't seem like, not that good. And neither is he the guy who pairs back enough to accommodate everyone else, even though he tries. But
Yeah.
he cuts a lot. He works off
Mhm.
of other players. He doesn't dominate the offense. He simply picks it up when other players are incapable. He's been selfless,
Yeah.
truly. And he's also elevated his game. As a Raptor, he's averaging 22, 6.5 rebounds, basically, and 5 assists per game on 58% true shooting. He has just walked over from New York and improved upon a bunch of things with the Raptors. He has gotten better. He's also a part of their best defensive units. Some of that is helping playing with better defenders, but he's existed in good defensive lineups, and still he's seen as like undesirable, reportedly. That
Yeah.
is such a shit deal, dude. Like, as much
Mm.
as you say there's logic to it, of course, it's
Yeah.
just a shit deal to do well, to do things that are asked of you, and to still people are like, eh. Like the Raptors organization very clearly, despite RJ improving at things, they're very clearly like, eh, on RJ. And to me,
Yeah.
it's disappointing, obviously.
Yeah. It sucks, especially because he's from here. He was truly happy to obviously is happy really being here. He bought into the system in ways that most people, not
That
us,
quickly didn't even. You
yeah.
know what I
He
mean?
he bought into the system and worked in ways with Scotty that many people thought would be very, very challenging. He showed he's the reason why I have faith that Brandon Ingram could buy into the system because it helped vault RJ's career in another way where he hasn't become like an all-star player as like he may have been projected coming out of Duke, but he is that his offensive game is of all-star caliber. It's gotten to that point, and the efficiency should, if he is on the team heading into next year, the efficiency should go up when he doesn't have to handle the ball as much with Bi there. I think it's just tough. Like you're in the Raptors are in a situation where they haven't hit on a lot of defensive talent, also too.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be hard to scale up and get to that good level and maintain a high level of defense where you've prioritized shooting and offensive skill with Grady, with Jacoby, and you haven't necessarily gotten back all the defensive talent that you've lost. You've lost since 2019, Danny Green, Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, Marcus Sauce, so on and so forth. It's tough. I think he's more so just like the sacrificial lamb of like their tax situation, and then also just the means of getting good. It's kind of like Harrison Barnes when he was on like the Mavericks. He was scoring a lot of points, playing decently, but they also still were meh on him as they were trying to get good.
Actually, I'll push back on that a little bit. I think Barnes is too low. Too low.
Ooh,
Like that's Barnes averaged 1.5 assists per game, dude. On
RJ's
the
playmaking has
like
been good.
Barnes, yeah, Barnes is too low a comp for art. Although I understand the culturally it represents
Yeah.
a similar thing. Yeah, it's just like a guy who's getting paid and you clearly the team has such little intention for him.
Mhm.
There's just opportunity right now, but they have no intention for what that opportunity looks like in the future. They've prioritized other things. So as much as like what the Raptors decide to do is completely up to them, but I do think like it does suck a little bit from
Yeah.
if I'm stepping into RJ's shoes that I bought in, I've been an ambassador, I'm like a pro's pro. I improved at a bunch of things, and still I can't work my way into you looking at me with like feeling good about it. If
Yeah.
we're talking about the organization, disappointing from RJ's perspective.
Mhm.
Although there is time for all of this to change, allegiances towards players can shake out differently, and honestly, like if the Raptors find because it seems like they're obviously looking for what that next trade slash pivot might end up looking like. It is dependent on the other team. If a team
Mhm.
loves RJ, maybe you get a bidding war between two teams. It's probably not going to be super vast, but maybe there's a bidding war where RJ, you're like, okay, this can look good for us. But if a team really loves quickly, if a team really loves whomever, I hope I use that correctly, whoever versus whomever there.
Yeah.
Uh, if that situation does bear out, like the guy who gets traded can change. I sat
Yeah.
across from Doc Rivers as he said, like, I feel like an idiot for trading Shea, and I worked really hard not to trade Shea, and I knew Shea was going to be incredible, but that was the guy they desired very badly, and nothing worked without him, so we had to give him up because nobody could possibly say no to Paul George and Kawhi Leonard together.
Yeah.
And also, signing Kawhi hinged on getting Paul George there. So it's just like,
Mhm.
you have to do it. The leverage comes from different places. Like, that's why people's predicted trades is like there's millions of people who predict trades. You almost never see a correctly predicted trade because there's perceived value in the league, but there can be a front office who throws everything out of whack. And RJ, while the Raptors, it seems, prioritize him the least of their core players, uh,
Mhm.
it's whatever the other opposing team wants can change these things drastically. But yeah, tough for RJ, man, because I do like him. And you and I were definitely like pro RJ, thinking the offense would look better, and it did. And the
Yeah.
defense has looked better lately, but obviously not enough to move the Raptors. But them's the breaks. Who was the player growing up who you liked a lot, believed in, but the Raptors just never seemed to be like down with that guy?
Jonas Valanciunas,
Oh
100%.
yeah.
During the Dwayne Casey era where he just, like, would not get minutes, it would grind my gears, especially, like, in the playoffs, like, he would have such a short hook, and, like, heading into, like, him getting drafted and obviously being a stash guy, it felt like he was like, he's another Togepi. He was just sitting there. I used to just look on the internet like, oh man, he looks skilled. We've been needing this. We've been needing this for years. And like I guess he to some degree played to expectations. Maybe not of the fifth pick, to
I
be honest.
remember when the Raptors drafted him and he got drafted fifth. I remember
Yeah.
they're saying like he's a stash player. They're like, if he came out next year, he could have been the number one pick. And I was like,
But
what?
like,
Are
what?
you like this guy must be awesome? Then he had 12. What do you have? Like 12 and 12 in his first game ever
Yeah.
against the Pacers. The Raptors lost by just like a handful of points. I was like, he might be sick because that was back in the day and age when, I played a decent level of basketball, but like my analysis of basketball, I was like, who can get us a double double in the front
Yep.
court? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
God, the halcyon days, it was so sick to think about basketball like that. Like Tyler Hansbrough signs with the Raptors. You look at his per
Yeah.
36 and just wonder, like, can he give me 12 and 10 from the power forward position? Kenneth Faried is the coolest player ever. You know what I mean?
So, yeah.
Oh, dude.
Ugh.
Well, do you want to talk about a guy who is, according to you, as big as Kenneth Faried because of the cultural boost. Take us away, brother. Take us away.
Oh, so what you guys all have been waiting for, we're going to be talking about Baylor guard VJ Edgecombe, my favorite prospect in this entire draft, for obvious reasons, other than him being fairly
Explain
good.
them, please. Explain them fully.
He's Caribbean, one of the great Jamaican islands. It's great to have a Caribbean player heading into the top 5.
You might cause some trouble, man.
He's very charismatic. I watched all of his Olympic qualifier stuff. He was one of the most vocal guys on the team, and they had NBA players on the team. Like Buddy Hield played for Bahamas, and he was very. Klay Thompson tried to play for the Bahamas also, and he was the loudest person on the team as an 18-year-old at the time. When I look at VJ, well, I think the prospect we discussed last week is better. I think VJ has probably the second highest ceiling in this draft. When I look at VJ and when he plays, the defensive impact is the where his floor starts and where you get the immediate impact probably as soon as next year. His all of his defensive playmaking metrics are the highest tier of underclassmen as freshmen. He's super athletic. He's very strong. He has really good instincts on the defensive floor, and his offensive ceiling can go many of ways. I've spoken to a few people. I'm sure we're gonna have some of these guys as we dig into this a bit more. But we've heard comps like Victor Oladipo. I've heard Andrew Wiggins. I've also heard Anthony Edwards, just because of the level of athleticism that he can get to and how well his play has grown since conference play.
So, for the people who'd like to know, VJ Edgecombe listed at 6'5", 180 pounds. He's a freshman out of Baylor, averaging 14.7 points per game, 5.4 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 2.1 steals. There's a lot of defensive playmaking here. His shooting splits are 44% from the field, 36% from downtown, 77% from the line. Basically, VJ, sometimes you watch film and it's the inverse. You know what I mean? Like, a
Yeah.
lot of what I've heard about VJ, I actually did not find while I was watching the film, and it was a lot of the in-between stuff that I thought was very interesting. For example, his drives lack a lot of success,
Yeah.
and that isn't what you'd think when people talk about him. And you see his highlight dunks, you wouldn't think that, like, he's shooting 37% on drives, which is obviously not good. And you would think that the way they talk about him as like an athletic prospect, it wouldn't be his catch and shoot 3-point shooting, which ostensibly seems like actually his best value add on offense right now. He's 39% on his catch and shoot threes, 44% unguarded, 36% guarded. Like, these things you wouldn't expect. And also defensively, as you said, there's, these defensive metrics like him a lot, but then you watch him navigate screens and it's like, underwhelming. And you watch him play isolation defense, and I actually came away underwhelmed. And then it's just like, he's a really great one pass away passer. He's
Mhm.
a really great connective passer. He is a really strong cutter, which I guess, people should be looking at. It's just everything that I would have thought about VJ from the popular talking points around him, I thought was lesser than, but you can obviously still see why that's involved in his potential. Like, the defensive stuff, the technique, I was like, I don't like it very much, but he's very explosive. He moves.
Mhm.
He can kind of try to mirror guys, and sometimes that leads to like laziness on ball. He just thinks he
Yeah.
can catch up, and he thinks he can do whatever he wants around screens. But, savvy guards outdo him consistently. But it's just, he was a very interesting watch.
Yeah.
And it made me think of, and I'll do some comparisons because everyone loves those because they're like cannon fodder. Andrew Wiggins, I think, is a decent one, but he's smaller, so it's
Mhm.
different, right?
Is it
Victor,
different? He's Caribbean.
oh yeah, dude.
Caribbean 6'3" is a North American 6'7".
Oh, dude, that rocks. That's hell yeah. So I perceive it as different. You perceive it as the same. I understand. I haven't been put on yet. Maybe this will be the prospect who changes me. Yeah, Buddy Hield is 6'10". He's like Georges Niang, right? He's just strolling around as a huge shooter. So anyway, He strikes me as one of these like really we actually just talked about it.
Mhm.
That archetype, VJ, to me seems like he could occupy it. It's the archetype that Drew Holiday occupies right now with the Celtics and Derek White to some degree.
Yep.
Although Drew is, a little more rough and tumble and Derek is a little bit more finesse.
Yeah.
Drew started out as like this on-ball guard in his career and found his way into like this unique catch and shoot dunker spot, like great efficient guard who sometimes runs offense. And I think of when I watch VJ, like some of the reads he makes of the pick and roll, like that going right, throwing the hook lob to the rollers, like, oh, that's nice. The fact that when he catches a pass, when the ball is pinging around the floor, like there's no catch and hold to his game. Do you know
Yeah.
how rare it is to find a guy who has like as much creation burst? There's not a lot of success, but a guy who tries a bunch of things that
Mhm.
guy doesn't hold the ball. It's a really strong indicator that VJ can exist in a bunch of different, especially in a Raptors offense that wants to
Yeah.
ping the ball around. Like he will move the ball quickly and he makes the right pass all of the time. And he can even like drive and then make the pass. And it's usually one pass away. There's not a lot of manipulation to him, but it's
Yeah.
like he plays a futuristic guards game, which I think is
Yeah.
a very strong indicator. And that's like the floor, as you said. The floor is that he does the futuristic guard things like screening, cutting, playing in the in between, making quick reads off ball. And then if you believe in the creation stuff, which he tries, he's not super
Mhm.
successful at, but then you see like how athletic he is and the fact that he has improved as a shooter, the fact that he is like trying to use different steps to get towards the rim. It's like maybe it does pop. He's very interesting. Very interesting.
He he's compared to like the mega athlete prospect you're usually getting, the bottom is usually very low because they don't do a lot of the role player and in between stuff well. But he is a defensive playmaker. He is crazy on the offensive glass, really strong for a
That's
guard,
yeah, good point.
which is super important in a playoff series. Andrew Wiggins won basically the Warriors a series because he could rebound the same way as a
You're gassing it a little bit now, dude.
Canadian or Vaughn, but
Won them a series. Wow. Okay. Fair enough.
fair
Josh
enough.
Hart is a good comp there too.
Yeah, but winning the possession battles humongous, and he's a guy that's going to help do a lot of those things. His feel and ability to cut and find open space is also like very strong, and that's one thing the Raptors do super well. What's going to define him and get him to the next level is going to be his handle. It's not even functional right now. The reason why he gets stopped and he gets stopped going towards the rim and why his finishing numbers probably isn't as desired is because right now as his dribble package, he has a hesitation dribble, he has the left right cross and kind of everything through that. He can obviously split a double. I've seen some tape on that as well. But he hasn't figured out how to play slower and how to play in those tight spaces. And slowing down in the middle is where you get to that creation and that's where you get to that actual stardom regardless of how athletic you get, you're still playing these larger players. He isn't beating them with size. So you're going to need to be able to be patient, find those open gaps, and score in those ways. But his conference play has been fairly high level. It's improved month by month. The shooting numbers have improved, and those touch indicators with his athleticism like pop out as like star potential. Like with his conference play, he's shooting 40% from three. His mid range jumper jumped to 45%, and he's shooting them on high volume in his conference play. So he's figured out a lot of the really hard stuff. I just think the handle needs to get to a point where he is able to play in the middle of the floor, be able to navigate and utilize his passing instincts that he's shown that he's had to make things easier for him around the rim. Because right now he's shooting around 53%. And that's the only real indicator that hasn't really improved throughout the season. It's mostly maintained the same just because he's similar to Grady Dick torpedoing himself at the rim, hoping to score.
Well, the point about his handle is a really good one. And to your point about like the finishing at the rim, it's 53% overall. He's shooting 43% on layups. That's like worse
Yeah.
than mediocre. It's almost abysmal. And
Yeah.
it's not because he's completely bereft of touch at the rim. It's because he has two moves going downhill. And one move is that he will pick it up and explode to the bucket if he can. He's had 29 dunks this year.
Yeah.
Basically like a dunk per game. As a 6'5", 6'4" guard in college, that's heaps. It's hard to dunk all the time in college because it's a smaller court and there's
Yeah.
always a guy under the bucket because of the 3 seconds. Having 29 is a lot, like
Yeah.
a lot of dunks. And I think that if you do that in college, VJ could be a guy who's having like maybe like 60, 70 dunks a year in the NBA, which like RJ dunks a lot and he has like 20. You know what I mean? Like you think in
Yeah.
your head, you're like, RJ dunks a decent amount. VJ could be one of those guys who like a standing dunker, the dunker spot shooting guard
Mhm.
dunker, a guy who like the offensive rebounding. Like it's just he can provide a lot of pop. But to the point earlier about why he struggles, he sprints downhill.
Yeah.
He will not wiggle. He will not change direction unless it is that Andrew Wiggins pound dribble spin. And the thing is, that pound dribble spin can beat his primary defender. However, there are guys waiting
Yeah.
at the rim. So you see VJ spin into this insane shot. And like sometimes he makes it, sometimes he doesn't. But most of the time, he's just like heading directly downhill,
Mm.
picking up the ball. And if he gets bounced, he just fades and tries to throw it up. He might have to try and make a crazy
Yeah.
floater. He's shooting 45% on his floater / runner. So that's a decent touch indicator as well.
Mhm.
But it's just like, he makes it really hard on himself. And he as a driver, he has a weird left-handed bias. I don't know, did you notice that? Like
Yeah.
he
He
loves
leans.
the left-handed, the in and out and just keeping it there. And I think it's because he loves the left to right sweeping cross. You see it when he sizes
Yeah.
guys up and he loves the tween as well. Like you can see he's clearly getting into workout ball and those
Mhm.
are things he's working on. But the point you made about like there's no variation in that he's clearly scared of
Yeah.
playing slow and getting picked in the middle of the floor. So
Yeah.
he speeds up and does insane things that make him shoot 37% on drives. But then you look at the things he's trying to do and you're like, God, imagine if things looked easy for him. And then you see how efficient he is finishing off of cuts and you see
Mhm.
how efficient he is like in transition and you say, man, if the bigger NBA court made this easier, it could
Yeah.
pop. Like he's interesting, man.
I think he's the most interesting player in the draft because his career can go so many different ways. Like especially if his handle does get better. And if the conference plays shooting holds and he is this guy that can hit a pull up shot at a decent clip, shoot the three off movement as well. He'll be at a point where he could be a guy that simply attacks closeouts and is getting a dunk a game just off of that. And he could get himself to 17, 18 points a game, being a super efficient player, strong defensive playmaker. And that's like you said, like Andrew Wiggins, Derek White. That's sub all-star play. Like that outcome, I think is likely is a hard word to say, but it's not out of the realm for him just because he's that type of athlete and that type of defensive playmaker, like instinctually. I think I noticed some of this stuff, like especially he cheats a lot trying to create a lot of those like defensive events because he's usually more athletic than the other guy. But like those senior guards are able to maneuver that, knowing you're going to be aggressive and then come underneath the screen the opposite way. But a lot of the things like defensively, like him cheating, him not using the best technique, are like super fixable because he's like that level of athlete. He'll be able to. I think if the Raptors draft him, he'll be able to guide other teams' point guards for like 10 minutes a game, and you'd feel fine about that as a rookie. And he would play well with Scotty, run off Iverson cuts like they do often, come off of curls, be a shooter in that function and be like a super efficient rookie, as long as the shooting holds.
He It's very easy to see how he fits into the Raptors' current MO.
Yeah,
Quick decision maker, hyper athletic. Like he is orders of magnitude more athletic than Jacoby. And
yeah,
Jacoby is a guy who finds out how to score as a cutter in this offense. And like
mhm,
Ochai Abaji. And And VJ is just significantly more explosive than those guys and will end up being probably like significantly stronger. Obviously being Caribbean, there's
Of course.
extra juice there, dude.
Oh,
What's the drink? Nutrimilk or Nutra,
oh,
whatever.
Nutriment.
Oh,
Yeah,
Nutriment. Yeah. He's yeah, exactly. Raised on that. It gives you that extra boost. It's just easy to see how he makes sense fitting in as a lower end usage guy in a
yeah,
good starting lineup, which is a great role. It's just, do you believe in the higher end potential, which would justify that top 3, top 4 pick, which from what I've seen, the expectation is that he'll probably be a top 4 prospect, but
yeah.
like nothing is guaranteed. Defensively, you and I, after Grady got drafted, we talked about how the size at the 2 guard position and how Grady, reads the game well and can play in passing lanes.
Mhm.
Grady has struggled so much defensively because he hasn't been able to put on weight and his slow feet. VJ, it's not even about like, oh, he's reading the game well. It's like he can just turn, see that the ball is coming, and
Yeah,
spring up and go snatch it.
yeah,
And a lot of like, I just watched all of his steals today. So much of it is being able to, on a whim, overwhelm ball handlers.
yeah.
And again, like he will go walk up to really strong guards with his hands down and not in a defensive stance, and he'll just expect to be able, like, I'll slide with whoever I want. I'll do whatever I want. Like it's inherently not good, but when he's in there, it
Mhm.
is like he's able to overwhelm and suppress guys. So as far as like what's coming back, there's a bunch of bad stuff. But with any young man, and this guy's a young man, you look at like what could be, and the potential can go very high with what he does, like as a selfless guard. Because again, 3.3 assists, his passing won't like wow you, his manipulation won't wow you, but 3.3 assists for a freshman guard is pretty healthy number. It's not like, like the best guards usually have like 7 or 8 maybe. Some of the best guards have like 4.5, 5. The fact that he's just like sleepwalking to 3.3 because he's selfless and reads the game quick and makes good like one pass away reads is pretty big deal. He can do so much stuff, and like he's shooting 19% on his pull-up threes, 31% on his pull-up twos. If that even becomes like passable, you talk about
Yeah.
new things there too.
Yeah. And because of the level of athlete he is, he's not, I wouldn't say he's like a Thompson athlete, but like he's underneath that threshold, like right underneath that threshold. His handle doesn't need to get to a point where it needs to be an A. It probably just needs to be a B because if he's able to like the sweeping right, I've tried to watch, I've watched around, I want to say 12 games of VJ this year. He never has a outside of the spin, he never has a counter for the left right sweep. And if that turns into him being able to catch, stop, maybe pivot and step through or use his hesitation to throw the ball out, go
Yeah.
right, go left like Donovan Mitchell does all the time. That's like high threshold, obviously. But he doesn't even need to do it to that level because he's a better athlete than Donovan Mitchell. He'll be able to blow by most defenders if he gets a functional handle, and he also has a requisite strength when he does get downhill to bump other guards because he's strong and Caribbean.
Because he's yeah, let's go. So just as a like a facsimile, we can go like Derek White. And again, Derek White is not an insane outcome for like a top 3, top 4 pick, but it's a good one.
Yeah,
And especially like, geez, the Celtics, they're so lucky with Derek White, dude. They hard, oh God, he's so good. But Derek White, 1.2 blocks per game last year. He's averaging 1 block a game this year. He's averaged 1 block a game or more 3 times in his career, and zero 0.9 twice. Like he's just a defensive playmaker. And I can't remember who he was playing, but VJ came over. He's in the weak side corner, and he was the tag man, and he came over late. But when you're the tag man and you come late and the lob gets thrown, you're cooked, because then you
mhm,
have to go steal the ball out of the air from like a 6'10" individual. Good luck. This guy did it.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like he just went out and snatched it. And he is like that, the offensive rebounding punch he gives you, the weak side like protector stuff that he gives you, as like it's never going, Like Derek White isn't the lone guy there, but he
Mhm.
hunts it as the second guy. This is what, like, when I played high school basketball, we had a 6'7" guy on our team, and we ran a 1-3-1. And I was the bottom. I was running baseline to baseline. And what I would do is, if there's a drive, I come off the baseline, force the pickup, and then you're like sitting there with a 6'7" guy. So he gets
Yeah.
to play the secondary. He was Jaren Jackson. We were ahead of the curve, dude. We were playing NBA basketball. But that is what, like, is if guys are forcing their pickups and then they're trying to avoid, like, Scotty Barnes and Jakob Poeltl, even Brandon Ingram, like that extendo arms he has in the
Mhm.
area, and VJ's just exploding up. I think he could be potentially one of those, like, one block per game guards, or at least in the
Yep.
vicinity. Like, and again, he has 2.1 steals per game now. He's a big time defensive playmaker, despite all there are warts that I was seeing. Of course, anybody can disagree, but there's just there's a lot of stuff coming at you with VJ Edgecombe. It's fun.
Yeah. He's similar to like OG Anunoby. Like, you're gonna let him be able to try to do the creation stuff because he's gonna be able to win minutes for you and
He
do a
doesn't
lot
fall
of the.
over either. This strong
He is
indicator.
very fluid. Yeah, very fluid. And like the touch stuff has been there and it's improved like throughout the year. So
Like,
for me,
I understand why somebody would, sorry, just quickly, why somebody would
go ahead.
hear that he shoots 43% on layups and be concerned, but then you watch the tape and this guy
Yeah.
is an insane person. Like, the shots he's taking
He's
are
just
orders
barreling,
of
yeah.
magnitude harder than what you think a layup is. It's like fading over three guys out to the right, and he has the ball extended out like Michael Jordan doing the ball fake or something like that. And then he tries to shoot it, and you're just like, what the hell are you doing, man?
Yeah, he's gonna be one of those guys that benefit playing in the NBA and on an NBA floor, especially if he's paired with a guy like Scotty. Once they get in transition, that would be cinema with them together. It would be he. I would personally, like, if we had the third pick, I would take him probably over the field just because it's a seamless fit. The Raptors need this archetype badly, and I think the ceiling is high enough where you could see him becoming an all-star if like the handle gets to a functional standpoint and the defense pops in a way where he's looking at like a all defensive level guard.
There's this thing that I loved, really loved about, like, Markelle Fultz and Lonzo Ball. These guys got drafted super high, and both of them obviously had their really high offensive potentials tanked by a bunch of injuries, different
Mhm.
types of injuries. But both those guys did a million of the right things all the time.
Yeah.
And VJ is a guy who does a million of the right things all the time. And those guys, they don't always wow on their first contract, but, like, once they sign that like, those guys just always fit and
Mhm.
always do stuff so well. And VJ, I see so much of it. Of course, he doesn't have the high end stuff that Lonzo and Markel had coming out of
Yeah.
college, and that's why he's not being talked about for second overall pick, really. I mean,
Yeah.
who knows? There's months between now and the draft. But VJ, in the same way that he came out of the corner to steal the lob, he'll come out of the corner to catch the lob. He'll make the 45 cut. He'll make, like, the Wade cut. He'll shadow a guy, right? Like, when you make that curve, like, let's say RJ's making a curve drive from the right, he'll cut in from the left and, like, come a little bit higher so there's a drop off pass so he can pound dribble and dunk on a weak side rim protector or something. Like, he's just there's just so much stuff that he might be able to do. He screens pretty well.
Yep.
Like, he cuts pretty well. He does all that garbage manning. I love that type of guard. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I fully believe in the high end offensive stuff. Like, handle is pretty tough to improve. It's one of the most, like, underrated. Damn, it's tough to be able to, like, comfortably dribble around NBA defenders, like,
Yeah.
in traffic. Who knows if it gets there? But the fact that he, like, already does all that, like, in between stuff, he's been a competent, at the very least, catch and shoot 3-point shooter. And if you clean up his defense, it starts to look absolutely insane. And defense, like, just, hey, Delilah, keep your hands up, like, let's think about, like, screen coverage for a little bit, like, that kind of stuff. It just it could be a yes. There's so many reasons to say yes to VJ. There's some reasons you could say
Yeah.
no, sure, but like there's a lot of reasons to say yes, which is what you want in a prospect.
Yeah, like, I'd be very happy if they end up with shed tears maybe, honestly. But he's a guy that, like, he
You
doesn't
gotta
turn
get
over the
him on the
ball.
pod, man. You can't talk this big old Caribbean game and not bring VJ on the podcast. We need once a month. I
Wow.
guess.
"Mr. Edgecombe, I have a podcast with my friend, and I would love for you to be on once a month."
Let's go.
But
Please.
oh, I think the reason why I believe in the offensive upside and the handle getting better is usually people that have handle issues or have a hard time navigating and wiggling is because of a lack of fluidity. Like Scotty is a perfect example. You could tell that he's actively worked on his handle and worked on it hard, but he's a very long guy, very high hips, kind of stiff in those portions that kind of help him defensively be sturdy, but not the best offensively wiggling. VJ has no problem moving around the court. He can slither. You see it on defense. He's that type of athlete. So if he and his crib and works very hard, I think he can get there and give you that punch.
Well, that's the thing too, is like the NBA is very much like some guys have it, some guys don't. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, of course, Shea can pull up from three now, despite struggling at it. Like Shea can
Yeah.
do anything because he started improving and suddenly he could do it all. And that
Mhm.
point is really good about VJ's fluidity. Like even in the size up stuff, like he scissor steps and like pulls off those tweens and explodes out of them, and he does have a limited handle, but like the stuff he's practiced has gotten pretty good. You
Mhm.
know, he doesn't get picked very often. It's just there's a lot of reasons to believe. And yeah,
Yeah.
the point you make is like the Caribbean stuff aside, if a guy's a hard worker and a fluid athlete, those guys can really like do stuff, man.
Yeah.
And again, it's like Derek White is another good example. We've mentioned him a bunch, but like Derek White, what's he do right now? His 3-point attempts per game, 9 per game. He shoots 39%. Last year, 7 per game. He shot 40% with his first year in Boston, 5 per game, shoots 38%. As a Boston player, he's shooting 38% on 6 attempts per game across this is now his fourth season. It's just like some guys just do it and get it.
Yeah.
VJ might be one of those guys, and I love those guys.
Mhm. Yeah. I
Do you
I
got
think
any other sell going on?
I don't think probably since Bilal, I don't think I've sold on a player this hard. So it's good to see. If I will not be carrying a Bahamas flag if we draft him, but I'll be waving my Jamaican flag in happiness.
Okay, well, the tremors of the pull-up trade deliberation will be felt. VJ is obviously his stock is going to rise. If anybody remembers, the first time we talked about Bilal, he was considered, an early second rounder, maybe late first flyer. And then he jumped all the way to 7, baby. VJ, I look forward to you jumping in the in the lottery. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here, Trey?
Um, I guess like the last week or so has been kind of crazy too.
Oh yeah, your personal. You had the ultimate dudes rock weekend.
Yeah, that is true. On Saturday, I went with our lovely friend Curly, who hosts the Live by the Three podcast, to watch the Elimination Chamber. Got this lovely shirt as well, and we witnessed John Cena break a million children's hearts across the world, including mine. I When John Cena turned on Cody Rhodes, I screamed what? And I put my hands up like this and just looked around the arena. And it was pin drops as the show ended. It felt like someone died in there. It was absolutely insane. And then we watched the great man, Mr. Oppenheimer, the next day. It was an amazing weekend.
It blew my mind because like I watched who was the we watched it at the cabin. Kevin Owens, and who was he fighting?
Cody Rhodes. Yep.
Oh, Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes. They did
Yeah.
that what is it, ladder match?
Yep.
I watched those guys and I was like, it is the most insane. It was the best wrestling I've ever seen because I don't really watch wrestling, but I parachuted in and watched with the fellas, and I was just like, "What the? This is insanity!" And the fact that Travis Scott steps into the ring and busts the guy's eardrum because he wants to slap him so hard. You do all these other things, and these professionals do all this, and then Travis Scott is like, "Let me bust this dude's eardrum really quick." Jackassery, dude. Like total and complete jackassery.
It's so odd. He was like, where is Waldo in the situation? This is probably like the biggest moment since like Hulk Hogan became a bad guy, which is like 30 years ago.
Voices in the air.
And like you just see Travis Scott just in the back just randomly. It's just odd. Imagine like Kawhi Leonard hits a jumper and Drake just ran into the crowd as well, holding Kawhi while everything has happened. Just odd.
It was I'm trying to think. And then I was seeing like was it I Show Speed took a what from Braun Breaker. What's the
Yeah,
move called?
spear.
A spear. I That was actually when I went to Blake's and watched the Royal Rumble last year. Braun Breaker was like my favorite guy because the spear. I was like, that guy's athletic. But then I watched the ladder match, and now either Cody Rhodes or Kevin Owens is my favorite because those guys they gave their life to it, man.
But
Oh,
Kevin Owens that weekend had another match. They had like an unsanctioned match. It's the Sammy Owens. Kevin Owens is Canadian also. Montreal, I think. But they wrapped barbed wire around the chair, cracked him on the back with it. Insane.
uh, like this is the thing too. I saw a video of people reacting to the Cena thing, and like here's the thing. It's the reason why CM Punk didn't impress me. It's the reason like I am parachuting in, I
Yeah.
can't appreciate the storytelling or the lore. So, like, the
Mhm.
old guys who have been around who aren't wrestling the same way, I'm always like,
No,
"Eh,"
that's fair.
but the guys who are young and they're like, "I give my body to this," they'll jump, like, 20 feet into a ladder, that's when I'm like, "Wow." Or who is the big female wrestler when she came in, she started bowling balling all the women
Oh,
out at
Nia
the Royal
Jax.
Nia Jax?
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, this is wrestling." But I saw somebody, like, as you said, broke a million kids' hearts. I've seen videos of kids being like, "Oh my god." I'm just like, "What is he a bad guy now?" You know what I mean? Like,
It's
I can't truly appreciate it. I
it's
wish I
it's
could.
literally it's just like Tony Stark, like in the new Avengers when he becomes a bad guy. It's gonna be heartbreaking. It's the exact same thing. It's been because like in the storyline, it kind of was logical, but like they never pulled the trigger on it, and
Wait,
then
wait, 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 wait. Is the John Cena heel turn the Paul Atreides Duke of Arrakis, "I'm guiding the way." Like, is that the speech?
yes,
Like, in
yes,
your nightmares, you give water to the dead and you weep with joy? Is that what that
yeah,
is?
yes, it is 1,000% that because he's trying to win his 17th title, which would be a record in WWE. He hasn't. He's tried to do it for 5 years, I think, give or take, and has lost every single time. So he went to the
John
dark side.
Cena is doing the global wrestling jihad. Let's go, dude. Okay, now I get it. Now I understand. Okay, well now okay, good. Now I understand wrestling because there was a Dune reference.
There you go. WrestleMania, we gotta watch.
When is WrestleMania?
April.
Summer?
Yeah,
April? Oh,
April.
we could watch WrestleMania in April. Hell yeah. What that could be the next thing we watch. We did random Monday Night Football or Sunday. I don't remember what day it was.
Oh yeah, Monday.
We
Yeah, the
we've watched
Jameis.
a lot of stuff together at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So now we did like 10 minutes on wrestling. I've never even been able to do 10 minutes with Blake, and he thinks he's the wrestling head honcho. I think you're the new head honcho of wrestling, dude.
I I live for this. If I was like 5 years younger, John Cena would have had me in a pool of tears. Couldn't believe it.
What's the most emotional you've been with wrestling?
Hmm. Emotional. That's tough. There's been times I've been like terrified. Like post. I don't know if you've ever seen the clip. Like post 9/11. Um.
Oh my god. Okay, let's hear it.
Vince McMahon wanted to recreate Al Qaeda. So he had a group of Al Qaeda fighters grabbed the Undertaker and and literally tried to like behead him on TV. And I was like maybe like 8 years old, and I wanted to cry, bro. I was like, yo, no winning on the Undertaker.
Dude. Oh my god.
The storyline was so bad. And obviously, people were outraged. I think he did this in like
Oh.
2002 or 3. It wasn't even that far out. So they had to like apologize and scrap the story like literally the next week because people were like, Al Qaeda invaded the WWE.
Dude, that rocks so hard.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, that's so good. What the hell? From the twisted mind of Vince McMahon.
The wild, nasty man.
Yeah,
Oh,
dude. I watched that documentary. I was like, this guy, not a good man, very bad
no,
guy.
not at all.
Oh man, he needs a trip to the spa. I tell you how much to become an enlightened human being. I'm so glad you told me that story. Wow, that's so funny. Oh my days. Okay, hell yeah. Wow. Like trying to think of how you can capitalize on 9/11 is truly like brain rot of the highest. Like, the- I bet like the guys they recruited as Al Qaeda were probably like Samoan. You know what I mean? They're just like if you
No,
have brown skin.
no, he was
Wait,
Indian. He was Indian. His name was
no,
Muhammad Hassan. It ruined his career too. He was like radioactive after.
damn. But well, yep. The peak of culture in 2002. Oh, okay. I'm very glad you told. I'm very glad I asked. You know.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, you close out the podcast, brother. I want to hear
Wow.
from you.
Wow. I've never really thought of a little catchphrase, but we do this for love and light, and it's been awesome to share another week with you guys.
Lord in heaven.
All right, hold on. Thank you guys for thank you guys for listening for another week. Next week, who do you want to do? I was thinking Ace Bailey.
I didn't get to do Ace because I had Lewis on, so we could do Ace. The
Okay.
almost unparalleled difficult shot maker in the history of college basketball, Ace Bailey.
Yeah.
He'd probably be fun to talk about.
Yeah.
And he
So
had a good driving game, which
Mhm.
goes against a lot of the critiques. Well, I think the critiques are still accurate, but yeah, Ace could be a fun one to do.
Yeah.
And we'll
Let's
dive
do.
into why you seem to not want to be, I guess genuine on your sign-offs. Like you want to be some sort of like guru?
I
What
don't
like
know.
what is this? You could be yourself, you are enough.
Wow. That's so
Yeah.
enlightened.
And if you aren't, I'd like if you're not gonna be yourself, I'd like you to be some approximation of like a mega church pastor. Well, I'm gonna talk about tithes today. Like I want to hear if you're not gonna be yourself, I want to hear prosperity gospel, like Steve Harvey. You should ask God not for food, but for a new Mercedes. Like that's what I want to hear from you, dude.
Oh, like Joel Osteen.
Yeah,
Never
exactly,
mind.
dude. Wait, let me ask you quick. Where does prosperity gospel exist in like Caribbean Christianity? Is that part of it, or is it kind of uniquely American? And
No,
you
no,
know,
it's definitely a part of Jamaican culture too. Like the pastor in any community is like could be more popular than Barack Obama.
hell yeah. Okay. All right. That's a great place. We will explore these themes throughout the next however many podcasts. All right,
All right,
everybody. Or actually, no, sign us off. Sign us
all right,
off, and I'll hit
all
end
right,
recording when you're done.
all right. Thank you guys for listening. I love doing this with my dear friend Samson Folk and talking about these prospects. Um, Appreciate everyone also that has been people have been sending me clips like, hey, have you watched this? Someone sent me VJ Edgecombe high school clips, and it helps me get through that stuff. So thank you guys. See you guys next week.